This is not a test. Stay calm in an orderly fashion. Make your way to the lifeboats.
Mayday, the ship is sinking.
All right, so welcome back, everybody. We're so excited to have you here as it is Wednesday, which means we're talking about recovery. We're talking about recovery-related issues, meditation, deeper questions, and that kind of stuff. So, Hunter, how you been, man?
Oh, not too bad, man. Been slaving away at the old job, but, making it work.
I mean, 'tis the season for recovery coaching.
Right.
So if you're in recovery, one of the things that you probably know, or I mean, even somebody that works in this field, you probably know better than most, actually, that when you get to, the February, March, April seasons, that is going to be the crunch time. You're going to have a lot of people looking for shelter. You're going to have a lot of people that are struggling more so. And that's before COVID. That's before what's going on, with different portions of our society and what's going on with culture.
Right.
That's just like, if everything was going perfect and according to plan, you're going to have a lot of numbers. I mean, with COVID, we're getting inundated. We got a lot of things going on in the hospitals right now. We got a lot of that kind of stuff. And we have recovery coaches in all of it. So yeah, man,
it's a good time.
It's, I mean, it's not a good time, but it certainly is like, we have no short of work.
Yeah. It keeps it moving, it keeps the pace going good. So.
It really does. So, for those of you who are turning in possibly for the first time, this is the Wednesday podcast where we talk about meditations. If you are a student, a professor, or you are a parent that may have a loved one or something like that in recovery or that's struggling with addiction, we will, as always, encourage you to listen to our Monday podcast where we talk a little bit about the science of addiction. I believe this upcoming Monday, we are going to be starting, it would be the second part of our stages of recovery.
Yep.
And as far as it goes in relation to this upcoming Friday, I believe we are interviewing the man, the myth, the legend himself, Joe Lowe.
Yeah.
So we got the big guy on campus, I believe. We're either is it this? No, we're interviewing Joe Lowe next weekend, next Friday. This Friday, I believe, is the good Reverend Dr. Deborah Smith.
Awesome.
So that should be interesting. So tune into that. But as for today, kind of the way that it goes is these are a little bit more looser podcasts. We like to talk about what's going on in our lives in relation to recovery, some deeper thoughts. I got prompt questions. We got maybe sometimes we'll go on tangents and we'll talk about like, this is what I experienced in recovery this week.
Right.
But with that being said, as always, I'll answer these questions just as much as Hunter do. Let's jump into kind of our first one that'll open up or mushroom into a topic. So what do you attribute the biggest successes in your life to?
That's a hard one, it's kind of a two-parter for me. I am of the faith. So I'm always going to say, obviously my higher power had a big part to play in all the success and none of it would have happened without that for me. But I'm also going to throw it out that getting sober was definitely, without that, I wouldn't have any successes that I had, and following the steps that were put in front of me and tapping into the resources I had. Because really, it comes down to without sobriety, I have nothing. Without sobriety, I don't have any sort of success in my life. I don't have any career opportunities. I don't have any, spiritual successes, emotional successes. I don't have any of that if I don't have sobriety.
Kind of anything you put before your recovery, you're bound to lose, I think is the old adage, right?
Right.
And that's what they say in a lot of the meetings. Yeah, I honestly couldn't agree more. A lot of it has to do with my sobriety. I think a lot of it also, particularly for me, will always have to do with my faith. Mm-hmm. My deep and abiding faith, and a faith that I hold sacred to myself. But it's something that, I believe my faith is meant to be acted out. I believe my faith ultimately is meant to my purpose in life is to spread joy and to spread love. And at the end of the day, there are a lot of people out there that don't believe as I do. Mm-hmm. That's okay. There's a lot of people out there that think my faith is stupid, and that's okay too. Mm-hmm. It will never cause me to not want to help them. It will never cause me to not want to do the right thing and bring them joy or be the catalyst for change in their life if possible. I think a lot of the things and successes in my life too, I cannot underplay the participation of the external voice, the participation of the people in my life that I've cultivated over time that talk to me, people that I trust and people that I know are going to talk to me even and tell me things even if I don't want to hear them.
Right.
So I don't know how that plays out for you.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, you were a big influential voice in my early recovery, being my mentor through the program I was in. But without the external voices, I don't think I would identify a lot of the things that I have going on internally, because it's harder for me to see some of that stuff.
Sure.
Where an outside voice can see that and be like, hey, I'm noticing this. Have you noticed it? And then I'm like, oh, you know what? There is something there. And then the other hand is like being pushed for success by healthy people.
Oh man, I expand on that because I think that's such an amazing point.
Yeah. So Jordan Peterson has something on this where he talks about you surround yourself with bad people. They're going to offer the ex-alcoholic a beer. They're not going to correct you when you're wrong. They're going to drag you down instead of lift you up. To where if you surround yourself with positive people and you have that influence in your life, people speaking in, they're going to make sure you're on the right path. They're going to correct you when you're doing something wrong. They're going to walk you forward in love, but also in correctedness.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to make sure that you're staying on the right path. And it's also like being pushed, like you have potential. You could do that. Having those voices in my life has been very influential.
And I'll tell you, sometimes I need to listen to those voices and I need to just turn them up to 11 so that I can't hear my own voice, the external voice in my head that's telling me. Because here's the thing, and especially because I come from a religious background and a spiritual background, and I am spiritually based in many of my practices,
Mm-hmm.
at least I would say I am. Oftentimes there can be a confusion that is set upon in recovery and spirituality where we're told to truly listen to the inner voice, where we're told to, the inner voice has wisdom and knowledge gained over your entire life experience. The inner voice many times in many religious sects is considered divine. It's considered that divine spark that's inside of an individual. And one thing that I found is I listen to the inner voice, but I get really, really clear. And once again, I surround myself with a lot of really good people, or at least people I would perceive to be good and that want the best for me and they're not quick to judge me, and they are quick to, exhort me and not extort. They're not quick to extort me, but quick to exhort me and tell me, really do the right thing. But one thing that I've noticed, what I would consider the golden path, and I don't know if you can speak to this at all, but when my internal voice is speaking to me and telling me something, and then the people that I've cultivated, that external voice says the same thing or matches up, that it's like a divine resonance.
Resonation.
Resonance. There it is. Not residence, but resonance. It's akin to like the tuning fork. It's just like all of a sudden everything feels like it's moving at the same time in the same place, and it's like this divine spot of like, I am where I'm supposed to be in the universe. And not only that, I'm clear about what my role is in this moment, in this time. And to me, I cannot think of really any other feeling that I've ever had in my entire life that outweighs that. And I've had feelings that match it, like sincere love and joy and happiness. For those of you who don't know, I'm about ready to have my first child, my son, Jonah, which I'm really excited. And that's, I cannot talk enough about how excited I am and how joyous I am and how in love I am, not only with my wife, obviously, but my soon to be son that I haven't even met yet, but I'm in love with him. And I'm so excited for that. But to match that, I would say that divine resonance, that like my internal voice is telling me that this is where my spot is in the universe, and people are echoing that without prompting. Right. They don't know what I'm thinking. They don't know what my internal voice is saying. But for some reason, they're echoing what's being said inside of me. And for some, it's just like, I'm filling the fabric of time that was uniquely created for me. So I don't know how you feel about that, but.
Yeah, definitely. I've had those experiences myself. And it is a unique experience when it happens. Usually it's like, for me, it's moving forward, not necessarily where I'm at right now, but when I'm thinking about something that I need to be doing or something I'm being called into, that's when that usually comes up for me. When I feel like I'm finding a direction that I should walk in, and I'm seeking some guidance. I'm seeking like, is this the right thing to do? Is it the wrong thing to do? And then I start hearing it from outside voices like, have you ever thought about doing this? Or I think you would really fit into this. And I'm like, hold up, what?
Well, I know, but it's shocking. It's closer than, and for those of you, once again, we believe in multiple pathways and all that. Absolutely. But for those of you that may be of spiritual, religious mindset, or even not, even if you're agnostic, atheistic, whatever, it is the closest proof of God that I have, at least in my own mind. It is like it, or the closest proof of the universe being sentient, the closest proof of there is something more than me.
Right.
You know, that we're going to talk about in the stages of recovery. I believe next week, Monday, we're going to talk about, you know, what it means to have fulfillment and what it means in integration. And one of the big things we talk about is the significance of looking at oneself as very significant. However, in the spectrum of all things, I'm a speck of dust.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the moment.
Or as NA says it, just a normal everyday garden variety addict, you know?
Yeah.
I'm like, thanks.
Thank
you.
But yeah, I can't explain that feeling away. I can't explain, especially if it's an answer to prayer or meditation.
Right. I mean, all in all, what it shows me is there's something, I'm not going to get into all the religious beliefs and everything, but there's something that wants me to go the direction that it's pointing.
Absolutely.
It's like, if I'm hearing it from me, I'm hearing it internally, I'm hearing it externally from different sources. It's like, okay, there's something saying you need to go over this destination. This is the direction you need to walk.
Now, I think it's important that while we're talking about this, we have to include that kind of the you know, be cautious asterisk, because here's the thing, that happens too when you're thinking bad things too. If you surround yourself with people that are making poor life choices, if you surround yourself with people, it's a good test. And you know, the person can be interchangeable. It doesn't necessarily have to be your mother. It can be your grandmother. Think of the person in your life that may have loved you the most. Right. Now, think about it in the context of, if I'm hanging out with an individual, would that person that I trust and I love and they took care of me when I was younger or whatever, would they approve of me hanging out with this individual? If the answer is no, because this individual is looking to sell you drugs, this individual is looking to use with you, this individual is looking to abuse you and use you up until you're no good to them, the answer is no. That external voice is not good. Right.
So we can even go even less than that and just say internally people know.
Yes.
You don't even have to like do a comparison like, would my mom approve of this person? You can just say, is this a good person to hang out with? Because honestly, if we're saying yes to hanging out with the old drug dealer or something who's still using, that's justification. That's rationalization. You know that you shouldn't be doing that, and you're just justifying it at this point.
Problem. And here's the thing. You know, I'll be the first person to, you know, that wants to see good in everybody. And guess what? I'm sure that everybody is capable of good in the right set of circumstances.
Everyone's deserving of love, but from a distance. You know?
Yes, exactly. Because there are going to be individuals in your life that many of us, I am chief of individuals that have done this before, where I'll be like, I become blind to the flaws that are influencing me, and I become super hyper aware of the things that are benefiting me. And I'm like, no, they're not really that flawed. You know, yeah, they got some things, but whatever. Like that, but there's a lot of good too. You know, we're friends, we're whatever. It's like, at the end of the day, you know. And here's the thing: if your internal voice is telling you should go use, and there's an external voice out there saying you should go use, that's not the divine resonance, or that's not the resonance we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you surround yourself with healthy, good people, then you're gonna run into that a lot less. Obviously, like you're gonna become your surroundings. So I think that internal resonance really does speak to something there. So where we talk about like you become who you hang out with, or you know, the old mantras like that.
Yes.
You know, you are your friends. I mean, those voices coming in, if you're already having thoughts like that, or those voices repeatedly coming over and over, eventually going to start resonating in thoughts, and then you keep hearing them. I mean, how could you not walk that out in a sense, you know?
Absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, that is truly where we see the growth happen, because we as recovery coaches, we do the best that we can, you know, meditating and helping the individual and really becoming that living mirror and trying to become possibly the first external voice in their life that is wanting the best for them and wanting them to do better and be better. End of the day, though, that is not necessarily the lesson that we can train them that is going to be integrated. It is just something that we do. And ultimately they need to find the individuals in their life that are going to do this. They need to cultivate it. They need to put themselves in the position that they're going to find that thing.
Right. So as I've said, I think every episode we've had, it's all about community. I mean, one way or another, recovery, whatever the pathway is, it has to have support behind it. It has to have healthy individuals standing in your corner. Today, I was teaching a lesson with seeking safety. So for those of you who don't know, it's a treatment for people with PTSD and substance use disorder.
Post-traumatic stress disorder.
Yes. And I already said substance use. But so with that, we talked about coping with triggers. So the last part is who, what, and where. So we've all heard who, what, and where in some format, you know, people, places, and things, playgrounds, playmates, playthings. We've all heard it. But it's not just about taking away the bad, it's about replacing with the good. So we take away all of our friends that we had in active addiction, at least when I was using. My friends, my hobbies, my everything I cared about
revolved around.
Exactly. So now that I'm taking out of that, my friends, my hobbies have to change to something healthier. I can't just rip apart my life and leave it ripped apart. I have to replace it with things that are healthy and good for me.
Because you will go back to those things if you do not start replacing and rebuilding it.
You're going to be seeking some to fill that.
Eventually, because it leaves, we talk constantly about, it's really weird. If you go to our office, if you're around us enough, you start to realize that we use a lot of abstractions, and we use a lot of parables, and we use a lot of scientific terms that are not being utilized right. And one of the things that we do talk about is like the pull of gravity or the pull of the gap, which is when you leave a gap in your life based around recovery, it will get filled in. There's not a question. There's not a question of if, but when.
And what?
It will come. That gap will be filled. The problem is oftentimes people, they rip the thing out of their life. They have that gap open, and then they do not actively they do not actively try to find or participate in trying to fill it in. They instead leave it alone. And once again, we've said it a dozen times, if we've said it once on the podcast, the natural state of things is atrophy. If you leave that gap open, the same old things are going to come in to fill it, or even worse, you leave that gap open for long enough, there are going to be new, worse habits that end up filling in that gap.
Well, when we look at it, we were miserable enough to try substances in the first place. So there was something, I won't say miserable, there's something there that led us to substances in the first place. Our life rapidly declined using substances. So now we're in a very bad situation. So all of a sudden we take away the substances, the thing that's covering up that hurt, covering up all that pain. What's going on now? It's like, we're not filling anything else in. We're not doing anything to improve ourselves. We're still at this low point, but the substances are gone. It's like, now all of a sudden I have to feel all this cruddiness that's going on in my life. It's a dangerous place to be at.
It's a very dangerous place, but I think that's perfect to jump into the next question, which is, what do you attribute your biggest failures to life in?
Christian Powell. No, I'm just kidding.
Shocker. I'll be your lightning rod of hate. Don't worry about it.
Right. So I guess the polar opposite of what I said for the first one. The first one, obviously recovery was a big part of my successes. My biggest failures in life, 100%, was too much substance use. I wasn't on a great track before that, but I definitely went a lot worse when I did that. And then in my recovery, my failures have always come to, you hear it a lot in the meetings, but taking my will back, being like, I want to do this. I don't want to do this. I know what's best for me. And it's like, I'll say it again and again. My best thinking gets me high.
Yep.
So it's a matter of, when I take my will back into my own hands, it's a very dangerous thing for me to control. And then I start leading myself into being in isolation, maybe, or not going to my support meetings, or maybe I'm not going and reaching out to people. Maybe I'm, really not doing healthy activities. Maybe I'm, I don't know. There's a lot of things I could be doing, but whatever it is, it's not good. So I would definitely take my will back into my own hands has led to a lot of failure in my recovery.
And I 100% agree with that. I know that is definitely one of the key points for me. Is trying to do my own thing and get my own self in trouble. Another thing that I think at least in part, and I didn't figure this out until much later on when I was in recovery, about probably I've got over 6 years now. I'm probably at the 4-year marker around there. I knew this intellectually, but I really didn't start to embrace it and integrate it into my recovery, which is I way too often blamed other people for what was happening to me. Now, here's the reality, especially about my recovery story. Love my parents to death, have nothing but the utmost respect for them. The reality is they both went to get their doctorates at the same time. I had a failing education. I was not doing well in school. I was a star athlete, which means that, regardless of the E's on my report card, regardless of the failing grades, guess what? I suited up and I played. And I played every down, every last minute on that clock when varsity football every Friday night, like without doubt. I was suiting up, I was playing because I was a star athlete. Yeah, that's right. Star athlete. You're welcome. No, but
better listen here, boy.
Better listen up. No, but for a long time, I would attribute the failures in my life to, well, my parents were there and they didn't know, and the school system, they failed me. And here's the thing. there gets to a point, and I'm saying this right now, if there's a recovery out there, or somebody that's struggling in addiction actively right now, I want to say this so that it resonates with you, because I have met too many people in addiction that have given me this excuse. There came to a point where, guess what? Everything that I thought was right. Mm-hmm. Everything that I thought about, my parents not being necessarily there for me in the way that I needed them to, my severe depression in high school that went undiagnosed until later on, and I've gotten a hold of it now, but that went undiagnosed and later on because I was failing and because of all these different things. The teachers that failed me, the teachers that made fun of me and brought me up in front of class, guess what? Those things happen. That is truth. Same time, what am I going to do about it? Mm-hmm. Can I sit here and can I think about how dare those injustices happen to me? Do I become, for lack of a better term, the statistic? Do I become the individual that is, I failed and my failure is directly related to what these people did to me? And I got to this point, early on in my recovery, but it really didn't become integrated until I was about the 4-year marker. Do I take the responsibility in my own hands? Because yes, I was too young to not know what I didn't know. And yes, I was too young that there were things happening to me. There were things emotionally and chemically in my brain happening to me. There were things that were happening to me, which by today's standards, if a teacher were to do that, they certainly would have been disciplined, if not fired. Right. They absolutely. End of the day, so what? So what?
It comes down to, like we say the serenity prayer all the time, right? So the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the
wisdom to know the difference.
Right.
And you're absolutely right. It was in that wisdom to start knowing the difference, because it's like, I cannot change those things. Those things happened to me. Were they wrong? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Should they have happened? Yeah, probably not. Were there better ways that I could have been helped, or those things could have changed? Sure. But it wasn't until I was just like, let it go. Mm-hmm. Because guess what? Those things aren't happening to you right now. Right. Those things happened to you in the past and they sucked. Mm-hmm. And they're integrated and they're a part of your being. But at the end of the day, I can either start looking at them as the bane of my existence and keep on moving on and being the person that I am, and being the individual that just says those things shouldn't have happened and I'm going to hold on to those forever and ever and use it as a justification to drink. Or I can start saying, I have nothing but the future to build ahead of me. I can become something different. I can remake myself. I can become a new person. I can become a new me. Mm-hmm. And that came all the way down from, I stopped the compulsive lying because that was a coping mechanism that I had back then. I stopped, a lot of my worst habits because I knew that those were all things that were coping mechanisms. And I started to say, who is the new me? Who I'm going to rebrand myself. Who's the new Christian? Mm-hmm. And guess what? There are still people from my high school days that look at me like I might see him in a shopping store. I won't actively look at him online, but I see him in the shopping store and they look at me.
Facebook stalk him. Let's be real here.
Facebook stalk him on Twitter. Yep. No, but I look at them and guess what? They look back at me and they consider me to be the scum of the earth. Mm-hmm. They look down upon me. They do not want to talk to me. I've had situations where I end up being somewhere and there's like 5 classmates that I know that are used to be friends of mine, and they look at me like, look at that piece of trash. Like, look at where he won't even talk to me, don't even give me the time of day. But at the end of the day, there is a multitude more of people who respect me, who trust every word that I say to them, who know that if I say I'm going to be somewhere, I'm going to show up and do it, who know that I'm committed to my work and committed to the cause that I'm fighting for in recovery. There you go. I mean, I could weigh in and be like, oh, those people, they don't, and be disgusted. But it's like, you know what, back then they know one portion of me. They know somebody who I was. That's not who I am anymore. And it's completely contingent on what I believe about myself, not what they believe about me. Because guess what? After I see them after that one time, probably won't see them again. Maybe I will, but who cares? Because I know that just as much as I see them in a store or a grocery store or whatever, 10 minutes, 30 minutes later, I'm going to be surrounded by friends. I'm going to be surrounded by loved ones. I'm going to be surrounded by people who trust me and, want the best for me and stuff like that. So as far as my biggest failures go, I definitely think that one of my biggest failures directly was resultant of how I believed the world owed me, or how I believed things that I had really no control over did me wrong. And I'm gonna hold on to those things like, with such fierce, what they say, anger or frustration is like grabbing somebody by the neck and drinking the poison.
This resentment.
Yeah, I mean, resentment. Yeah. And that's exactly the same principle I'm talking about. It's like, I could resent those things for the rest of my life, but what does it do me?
Right. I mean, I think you made a really profound point that like you're acknowledging those things in fact did happen. You're not saying that it was right of them to do those things, but you are saying that you have to still move forward in your life.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, okay, so these terrible things did happen, but what's up now? Like I can do something different. I like that.
Well, and I think, I mean, you and I have had several deeper conversations about that at no point am I saying, cover it up, lock it up in a box, throw it up in the attic, forget the memory. Not saying that at all. But what I am saying is like, acknowledge that it happened, then move on.
Right.
Acknowledge it is what it is, because the thing, anything that happens in your past, the only thing that you can control about that thing
is how it affects you right now.
Is your emotion. And we talk about this in class. All of us are 3 different individuals all at once. We're the person of our past, we're the person of our present, we're the person of our future. How we view the past is affecting our present right now, which is going to affect our future. It's not until we integrate what we believe happened to us that very well may be true. We integrate that in how we view our past, and that it doesn't give us anxiety, and it gives us like, okay, it did, but let's keep going. That we can get comfortable being in our present and really look and say, like, executive functioning, how do I affect my future? How do I get these things? But if you're constantly dwelling on the past of he hurt me, she hurt me, they weren't there, whatever it might be. And once again, very obvious things that very well might be true. That's affecting your present right now because you're constantly hanging on to that thing, which is affecting your future. And that's not going to help you.
Right. Absolutely.
So what is your best way? We'll go your best way and then the best way in general you believe to attain happiness.
To obtain happiness. Sing Kid Cudi's I'm on the Pursuit of Happiness. At least twice a day.
Good song. Good song. Phenomenal artist.
Yeah. So I guess for me personally, and I think I kind of touched on this last week a little bit, it's just about meeting the potential that I know is there. Because I feel like if I'm not working to the best of my ability, like it may feel good at the time because I'm being lazy and like I'm like I don't have to do anything right now. Then later on it brings more of the misery because it doesn't go away. It stacks up, right? So I guess when I'm working towards actively doing things that I know I need to be doing, when I'm taking care of all the stuff in my backyard, when I'm cleaning out my closet or whatever, when I'm doing those things is when I start to feel the happiness, because it's not about like no work and then eventually you feel good. It's about hard work and then eventually it pays off, So I guess that's kind of for me what I think the best way for happiness is. And for everyone else, I'd say almost the same thing, like the best way in general would just be from seeking out whatever it is that you want to do, whatever it is that makes you happy. You have to find that thing. You have to seek after it.
I 100% agree. I think it does come down to analyzing where your life is, analyzing where you want your life to be, and then putting systematically in place the things that you're going to need to do to get there.
Right. And then we talk about balance again. I think that you can't go without that on this conversation. It's about balance the work with the play. It's about balancing the realism with the fantasy. Like you got to have some goals and aspirations, but you got to make sure they're grounded in reality, right? They can be a little bit out there, like, oh, I've never thought I'd be capable of that, but like not saying like I'm going to build, like I'm going to put balloons on my house, I'm going to float up to space, and then I'm going to live up there, something like that. Like we need to stay grounded to reality. But we also need to have a little bit of hope and aspiration, right?
Yeah. And I absolutely, I think, hope and aspiration are 2 of the key drivers in what makes a human being's life worth living. Because if you don't have hope, then what in the world do you got? I mean, because at the end of the day, hope is the last bastion. You could have so many things in life and also hope. But if you don't have anything in life and you don't have hope, then what else is there? Right. I mean, you can't, there's nowhere to go. There's nothing to move towards. So I do think hope is an absolute. I do also think, in attaining happiness, not to sound cliche, and I want to break this apart as far as having a conversation.
Great way to start it. Not to sound cliche, but
I'm going to sound cliche. No, but I do want to have a conversation breaking this apart a little bit, which is, the key to happiness is internal knowledge, or money is not the key to happiness. Power is not the key to happiness. Wealth is not the key to happiness. And too oftentimes, I think we live in a culture where that's being fostered more than ever.
I will say that those things, okay, so like the wealth and things like that, those things could very well be somebody's happiness, you know,
Sure.
to each their own. But it's like you're saying, it's internal knowledge. Should that on itself be true, right? You got to know who you are and then pursue that. Absolutely.
But I mean, and I'm not to sound horrible here, but it's like, how many examples there's so many, but how many examples are there of individuals who are extraordinarily wealthy? They're wealthy based upon, you know, maybe their New York Stock Exchange. I mean, wealthy. We're talking like, you know, 7-figure, 8-figure incomes yearly, things like that. And then they lose everything. The market tanks. I mean, back in the 08 housing crisis, the suicide rate went through the roof. And the reason for that is because people lost their wealth.
Right. They lost their retirements and everything.
Yeah. And it's just like, what happens, you know, why is it that an individual like Mother Teresa can be happy? Why is it that people who have nothing can be joyous? I mean, what? So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point because obviously it's been proven. I think it's very clear that money does itself not lead to happiness. I did hear one guy, he was talking. He was in an interview of some sort. I have no idea who this guy was. It was kind of just a glimpse that popped up on my news feed.
Story of Hunter. I heard it somewhere one time from one person. I don't remember where. Do not quote me on this because I could be completely wrong.
Yeah, no, I know this is basically what it said, more or less. Air quotations.
Air quotation. Possibly, if you quote me on this, I will find you.
So it was basically that money itself does not make one happy, but it does remove some of the barriers that keep people unhappy.
Okay.
It takes away some of the struggle. And I do see that, but I guess once again, it depends on what do you want out of life. For like Mother Teresa, she was looking at, and I know I probably butchered the name. You said it all fancy. I know.
Teresa.
I don't know. So there is like one side where like what she wanted was complete surrender of her life to God. That was her goal in life. And she did that thing and that brought her happiness. You know, I don't know, maybe, what's the name of the guy who owns Amazon?
Jeff Bezos.
Jeff Bezos. Yeah. So maybe his goal
Every
is
video that I have seen of that man, by the way, he has a grin ear to ear, like Joker style grin, laughing like maniacally. I mean, not to say anything of him or his wealth or anything like that, but it's just like,
and
he seems like seems like a pretty wealthy dude that's pretty happy.
Right. So an example of that, maybe his goal was to run the biggest company in America.
It was.
Right.
Oh, they have quotes of his partners from back in the day that say like, he came to me with this idea about selling books online, and the books online, the common misconception, and this has nothing to do with recovery, but it's a part of the story. So why not tell it? But the books online was the first thing. The reason he did books online was not based upon like, he wanted to have the first open bookstore. It had nothing to do with that. Like he did market research. He was a very, very intelligent guy that worked for affluent firms and coding and things like that. And he knew that books were the most diverse and most, they were on the top 10 things that were sold online at the time.
Right.
And he told his early friends, one day I will be the richest man on the planet. He told them that. And it's just like, so that's some foresight for you. You are correct, sir.
Two things I want to say. One, remember a couple episodes, I think when I was interviewing you, so quite a few episodes ago, you said, I know a lot of things about stuff that is very, what was it you said?
I saw a lot of things about stuff that isn't important to anybody. I think was the general language.
Perfect example of that. Just so you guys catch
just by the way, happens all the time.
But no, I mean, so his goal was that. So he pursued his goal and he achieved it. So really, I don't think it has anything to do with monetary. I think it more has to go with like, what is it that you want? Like you said, internal knowledge. So that on itself, you have to be true. In order to find happiness, we have to first know what we want.
No, and I 100% agree. I just, the fear, and I think this is maybe why they generally say these two things together, which, you know, money does not buy happiness. I think what people are getting at is the problem with money is it is based in value. It is based in, if I give you $1, you have $1, but
I have $1.
No.
Okay.
But carries cash around anymore, man. It's 2021. What are you talking about?
Cash at me, Venmo, something. You know?
No, but if I give you $1, you now have $1, but I have $2, which means I have more than you do. So for you to outdo me, you now have to get $2 more. So you have $3, and it goes this back and forth where it's almost a competition. And we start to see this value system of like, well, it can be measured. I can look at it. It's not based in any abstraction or any archetypal thing. It's like, I can open the Scrooge McDuck, you know, banking vault and see the piles of gold and dollar bills and money. And that's where my happiness is based. But I would be less happy than I am now if you took away 10 of those out of the vault. or 100 of those or half of those or all of those, versus somebody who tries to seek internal happiness that is not based in a monetary value. It's based upon, do I feel fulfilled? Do I feel like that gap is filled with, I feel that my life has purpose? Or going back to the earlier part of our discussion, I feel like I am serving the purpose that the universe or that God or whatever you feel, I feel like I am serving that purpose in front of me. Like I'm doing that purpose. Versus if you're just seeking money, I think it's very difficult to find that, because it's just like, there can always be more money.
Right. I think when anything that you can, or I'm looking for the word and I can't think of it, but any material thing that can bring you happiness is probably not going to be long lived. I would agree with that. That's true. Happiness comes from an internal source, whatever that is. Like I said, it's fulfilling something, right?
Sure.
It can't just be from having something or like possessing something. Otherwise, like that thing can go away. Just like at the table. So in my 12-step groups, we talk about like higher powers and stuff like that. And we basically say it can't be anything that you can break. You know, that's something I've heard, because I can't rely on something that's going to go away or could possibly go away. Like, oh, my higher power is light bulb. Well, the light bulb burn out. Guess to go get, you know, like, I mean, it's just, there has to be something inside or something else, something, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I get 100%.
Kind of losing my thought, but yeah.
No, but it does. It has to be something that it's like, it can't, it has to be, it has to essentially be, it has to be omnipotent. It has to be something that will forever stay.
Right.
You know, it can't be something that is going to perish, you know, the next minute. And once again, I mean, there are people that have died unbelievably wealthy, and I don't know their situation. I don't know if they're happy or not. I do have family members that I would consider to be significantly wealthy, and they seem happy to me. You know, they seem filled to me. They seem like, you know, life is generally okay with them. But here's the other thing too, is even in their life, something that I know about them is they give a lot. Something I know about them is that they are constantly in a state of seeking unity with their higher power. And they're constantly in a state of like, how can I become closer to you? And they give of their time, they give of their wealth, they give what they can, you know, within, because one thing that a lot of people don't know is when you get to a certain point in life and you do, because, you know, where you start to think about how much, what is it going to take for me to retire? What is it going to take for, my kids to be taken care of and things like that. And a lot of times I think we can get a one-dimensional image of, well, that person's wealthy and they need to give money back. And in reality, it's like, yeah, they may be wealthy by our standards, but they're about to retire, which means that they're probably, you know, that 10, 20, 30 years out from passing. And they also have like 12 kids. So it's like, how much, you know what I mean? But yeah, I think as far as happiness, it becomes difficult to attain happiness without wholeness of yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's all about seeking a fulfillment of one's purpose. When you're saying the Scrooge McDuck thing, all I could keep thinking about was like, the American dream.
Yeah. DuckTales. Ooh. All right. So is it better to have a broad or a deep knowledge base?
Well,
I guess let me ask this question first, and then because I think this will span and this will go really well into this question. So what's your thought about the importance and the difference between wisdom and knowledge?
Wisdom and knowledge. Okay. So wisdom is a deeper understanding, is my belief. And a lot of it, I believe wisdom to have more of a divinity to it of some sort. In my personal beliefs.
Can you explain, what do you mean by having a divinity of some sort?
Knowledge that's deeper than one's understanding could breach on its own.
Okay.
If that makes sense. And then with knowledge, it's just learning about something. It's obtaining a know-how about something or something or somewhere or whatever it might be. It's just having knowledge.
So what's the importance that you would say to have wisdom versus knowledge and knowledge versus wisdom?
I guess it depends on what we're talking about. So like for me, I would say I have a pretty deep knowledge of substance use. You know, I would say that I have a pretty, I wouldn't say wisdom because I'm not all that into it, like all into the scientific stuff, but I have a lot of wisdom when it comes to like how I interact with human beings, how human beings interact with me and things like that. So I guess it's like, they can be applicable at different times. Like you have knowledge about Jeff Bezos starting out history, you know?
Thanks, YouTube.
Yeah. So I guess it's like, I don't think it's bad to have a knowledge in a broad area, a lot of knowledge about a lot of different things. When we're talking about wisdom, I don't think that wisdom is something that you would obtain over a lot of different things, if you get what I'm saying. So like I have a lot of wisdom in scripture. You and me have talked about that quite a bit, but I guess it's just a matter of I don't know. I feel like wisdom is going to be more in one area. It's going to have a really deep understanding in one area
Mhm.
and a broad understanding in a few different things, things that it interest you. Like I have a knowledge of fishing. I have a knowledge of hunting. I have a knowledge of this, a knowledge of that, a knowledge of this. And then I have a wisdom of something,
Okay.
it's like, so I have one big thing and then a bunch of little things. If that makes sense.
Okay. So, I mean, as far as having deep or broad knowledge, what do you feel, let's say, is applicable to the recovery field? And then let's say in your own life, what do you feel is more important to you?
Okay. So in the recovery field, you should have a broad knowledge. I would think. There's
I
obviously,
would 1,000% agree with.
yeah. I mean, like, quite frankly, like you're always going to have your specialty. Like people go and get the doctorates. They have something they specialize in, right?
Mhm.
Not mistaken. So there's a deeper knowledge, like a really deep understanding of something, but then there's a broad knowledge of everything. Because if I just know about this one resource and I know really well about it, like I know everything about this one resource, then a client comes to me and he needs another resource. I'm like, well, I don't know what to tell you, but this one resource over here,
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that you need to have, I mean, and this is something that we teach. This is something that I taught you. Like, you need to constantly be learning. You need to have a broad base of knowledge that is based in everything. I mean, right now you're learning about Section 8 housing. You're learning about, housing complexes and how those things work.
Right.
and those types of things. And it's just like,
Not a fan.
well, I mean, rewind. If we were to rewind about a year and a half, before you get, like, as you were getting into this field,
Mhm.
would you have ever thought that you were going to learn about that as much as you're learning now about Section 8 housing?
No, no. I mean, about the economic redlinings and stuff like that, the stuff that like you don't see on the surface level. No.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you start to find out, like, whoa, this
Yeah.
is way more complicated and way more deeper. And it's good to know what's going on. It's much better to have friends and what's going on. So like, when we have owners of apartment complexes that we call so that we can get past some red tape on
Mhm.
something, but it is a matter of like, once again, you would have never thought that this is going to be important. Now it's like, man, this is important. And then there's 3 other things that are really important too that I have to start learning more about, because everything is changing. And when I say everything's changing, this field that we're in, it's always changing.
Mhm.
The knowledge base is always changing. How we approach things is always changing. What's happening, the laws,
Yeah.
but what's happening in the localities is always changing.
Mhm.
I mean,
New organizations.
yes.
I mean,
In Lansing alone, I mean, we've had multiple organizations go under since
Mhm.
COVID started. We've had multiple organizations start since COVID has started.
Absolutely.
So this is like this odd changing of the guard that it's like you have to constantly be on the, like, okay, who's doing what? But also, I think a depth of wisdom and knowledge is very important in specific areas.
Absolutely.
Like I would say, you and I have a broad sense of resources and how to refer people to resources and what they're going to do and yada, 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 yada. And that's fairly broad, but there's not a whole lot of depth to those things. Like we know who to call. We maybe know the name of the person that we need to call at the resource. And that's going to be good enough for us because we know that this individual is going to handle this here. But I think that we have much deeper knowledge when it comes to things like motivational interviewing.
Absolutely.
When it comes to
something we practice every day.
Yeah. When it comes to relating to the individual across from us, when it comes to picking up nonverbal social cues, when it comes to, we're talking to the individual and then I know this for me and I can't say it for you, but my suspicion it is for you, that our brains in this field become rewired to remember pieces of information that, it goes in one ear and out the other and it seems irrelevant. But then for some reason, your memory screams back like weeks or months later about like, remember this person said this thing about this thing. And you're like, like, hey, what about this?
There's this part of your brain. It's like that big. And apparently it's in charge of that stuff. Just saying, I know that. And I don't know what it's called, but it decides what's important and what's not. So science from Hunter.
I don't know anything about this, and I think it's in your brain, but
no, I know it's in there. It's about the size of a pinky. I remember that.
Well, tune in next month because we are going to have some neurochemistry people on.
Give me one question. I'm gonna be like, "What's that
thing?"
Part
of your brain. It's kind of like the end of your pinky. It cycles in information, but yeah, I mean, you know what I mean. It's like we have so many conversations with so many different people on any given day of the week. And the amount of information that is interchanged in one day is enough to fill a week full of conversation. And then oftentimes, fast forward a month, 2 months, 3 months later, a little nugget of information that was totally irrelevant to what we were doing at the time comes screaming back to our head. And it's just like, this is what's happening here. Well, how do you know that? Honestly, I know I had a conversation about it. Don't remember who with. Don't remember what happened.
Kind of like that part of your brain, and it's like,
yeah, the size of your pinky, and that's what Hunter goes into. Let me tell you about brain science. Yes. All right, look at my pinky.
The Abdullah Amangata.
Abdullah Amlingata.
But I mean, really, like, I see what you're saying, and it's in a sense of like those things we talk about every day, especially like we're talking about motivational interviewing, interaction between another person. All those different things you were saying there. Of course, we're going to have a good deep wisdom of those things because that's a daily practice. We're going to have a knowledge of resources because we're not calling those resources every day. We're not going and having a conversation with those resources. It's like we deal with them and we know they exist and we know what's happening generally in our field, but every day we're talking to clients.
And it's that repetition. It's that constant sense of like, okay, where we are doing this over and over and over and over and over again, having the same conversations, because it's the reality of this field is everybody's recovery story is unique. Everybody is different. At the same time, you are going to see patterns and you are certainly going to have the same conversation that you many a times over, because
normal
it's just
everyday garden variety addict. No,
not I mean, but you know what I mean. It's like there's just times where it's just like
there's repetitions.
I feel like I've had this conversation like 20 times now. I know, especially around housing, I have the same conversation every time because it's the same exact like sequence of events that ends up happening. So how should someone structure their life?
Yeah, scary. Balanced. You'll hear me say that word so many times when I talk about recovery because it is very important. So when we're talking about structure, there has to be a balance, right? So like, what's important to me? How am I going to do those things? What are my responsibilities? And how do those all plug in to be able to happen without overwhelming me? You know what I'm saying? So like for me, I have to structure my life in a sense of like, I have to wake up and I got to, get my protein shake, and then I take my vitamins, and then
my vitamins,
and then I pack my lunch, and then I go up and I take a shower, and then I let my dog outside, and then I go to work, and then I get off work. It's like I have a routine, a structure during the week, and then I go and hit a meeting or something like that. But I have to balance those things because I can't just do that. So on the weekends, I go and I hang out with the homies and I play video games or do something that does me no good in my actual life. Like I have to have a balance, right?
I've had several times where I call him and he's in the middle of one of those things. And you would have thought that I would have taken his firstborn. He's like, why are you calling me right now?
It's a weekend.
Like, what do you want? When he's not sending me stupid memes or videos of where he's at. Like, look where I'm at. Like, I don't care.
Yeah. So I guess it's all in my life. It's about balance. It's about structure and enjoyability. It's like, and there are some days like weekends where I'll come in and do work, because I have work that I have to finish. There are some weekends.
Whose fault is that, Hunter?
Probably me. There's some weekends where I'm like, okay, I want to go out to the lake this weekend. I want to go fishing. I want to go hunting, or I want to go do this. And I do those things because those are important to me.
Sure.
So it's just balanced, right?
And I think hit it once again, right on the nose. I think, everybody needs structure in their life, but I think it's important to define what I mean by structure. It's like, if you striking that balance at first in recovery, find a routine.
Absolutely.
Say it again. Find a routine.
And skip work and lie to your boss.
Don't do that. No, find a routine. Go, wake up at the same time, do the thing, go to the meeting, do the next thing. Find a routine. And it doesn't have to be a fully structured day with a fully structured routine. And then my planner says, I wake up at 7:00, by 7:15, I'm brushing my teeth. You don't got to do that.
I've done that before. It's very rigorous.
Yeah. You don't want, because it can be overbearing. You feel like you miss one thing and then all of a sudden your entire schedule is being blown out by half an hour at the end of the day. Right? Yeah. You don't want that. So it's like, find a routine where you're doing the same thing, whether it's like, I'm going to wake up and then I'm going to meditate, or I'm going to pray, and then I'm going to go call my sponsor, and then I'm going to go to a meeting, and then I'm going to go get breakfast with, coffee with the guys, and then I'm going to go to work, or something like that. That is going to get you in this mode of like, okay, I have now a structured life. Now let's find some balance, because it is much easier to have a structured life, to have that routine, and then to start inserting time and scheduling out time sometimes to have the free time, than it is to be like, well, I've had a long day, or I've done, it's been a long week, so I'm just going to take a free day. It's like, you do not want to do that, because ultimately you will find it that it's like, well, what about one more free day? Well, what about one more free day? Well, what about?
Absolutely.
And you get into a real grueling place where you're stuck right back in the circle. So find a routine, keep to the routine as best as you possibly can. It's okay to negotiate sometimes. Like with
Things
me,
happen.
I work out in the morning. There's some days where I work out where where I wake up and I'm like, man, I'm exhausted. I got a lot to do today. And by the time I get to the gym and then get back and shower off and do all that type of stuff, I'm going to be running right up against another meeting. So what do? I said, okay, I'm going to have a double tomorrow. I'm going to do twice as much work tomorrow as I am today. And you know what? When I get there, I follow through with it.
Right.
It's grueling, but I follow through with it. Bully myself. Don't negotiate.
Right. So I will say, this comes back, like a lot of the times when I'm working with people, if it is applicable for them and it is possible, I would always recommend some sort of structured living in early recovery.
Yes.
So like when I'm teaching classes in rehabs or something like that, and I'm talking to people, I might have a conversation like, have you ever thought about transitional housing? Have you ever thought about this?
It's a great conversation to have.
Right. It's and for some people it's not plausible. Like they have kids, they have families, and it's like, I understand that, and it might not work for you, but in early recovery, that's what helped me a lot. Like I went to a very structured 1-year program over at Endeavor House, and it was very, very structured. I had stuff to do all day. I had a 1 to 3 where I could take a nap, and like, oh, man, I miss that now.
Yeah.
I need to incorporate that into the business policies. 1 to 3 is Hunter's nap time.
Yeah. And at 1:05, I'm going to knock on that door and be like, are you napping? I will find you. There is no place on earth that you can hide where I won't find you.
So yeah, it's early recovery is when that needs to be cemented of some sort. Like, and it's very good if you get an outside influence, make your structure for you in the beginning, I would say, because it's hard to self-structure early on in recovery.
Yes.
Because it's like, we're all or nothing type of people, or at least I am, it's like, I'm going to build Rome in one day, or I'm not doing anything.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right. You will fail.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't mean that as like, you're a failure. It's just like, don't set yourself up for failure. Yeah. Do not put too rigorous, if you've just got off of using and you just got out of the treatment center and you're like, all right, I'm going to wake up at 6:00 in the morning. And then by 6:15, I'm going to do my breakfast to, 3 eggs and I'm going to do my vitamins. By 7:00, I'm going to be in the gym. By 9:00, I'm going to be done with having lifted a full workout and ran 5 miles. And then it's like, no,
calm down.
Easy. It should, for early recovery, when we say that, we mean like a year, maybe even in the first 2 years, you want your schedule of like roughly, okay, I'm going to wake up 100% before 8:00. Like I'm definitely, hopefully you can get a little bit more down. It's like, I'm going to wake up by 7:30 or wake up before 8:00. Then, I'm going to take, like Hunter, I'm going to go walk the dog. I'm going to do my protein shake and I'm going to eat. And then I want to make sure that I hit my Tuesdays and my Friday meetings that happen at 10:00 over at the Alano Club or over at the whatever.
Yeah. And I will say at nighttime, I think it's important to be more structured for people in recovery, because that's usually when the mind, like, because usually early in the morning, we're waking up, we're in a positive mindset, we're doing our prayers, or whatever that might look like. We're going to work. But then at night, it's like we get home and we're sitting there and it's like, I would suggest like an early recovery, schedule those nights out a little bit if you can. Like I'm going to go take my laundry to the laundromat. I'm going to do it. And then I'm going to go to a meeting or something like that.
And I'm going to say something that's going to be really harsh. It's going to be really, really harsh, and it's going to upset possibly a lot of recoveries, but it needs to be said. Okay. And that is, if you are of the opinion that coffee or drinking those 3 sugar-free Red Bulls or Monsters isn't going to affect you or your sleep patterns, you're lying to yourself. Scientifically speaking, yes, it will. You are putting caffeine, many points, a lot of caffeine and a lot of sugar. And then when you're feeling like, well, no, I go to bed normally at 1:00 every night. No, that is because of the caffeination that you're utilizing. Like, and I don't mean this to be rude or a jerk or anything like that. It's like, no. First thing that we do with our recoveries, we usually try to get them into a doctor, because especially people who have been in addiction for a while, guess what they haven't seen? A doctor in probably a good long while.
It's like the first step, right?
One thing that you might want to ask your doctor is it a good idea for me to be ingesting as much caffeine as I am, or as much sugar as I am?
I feel kind of attacked right now.
As you should. No, but I mean, I would, because I'm saying this as somebody, I'm speaking from experience, as somebody that would do, pop a Red Bull or a Monster or a Bang energy
pop a
drink.
Red Bull.
Well, Bang energy drink wasn't around then, but pop a Red Bull at like 6 or 7 o'clock at night. Caffeine doesn't affect me. And then I wonder why I'm like restless sleep. I can't get to sleep. My brain won't stop working until 3 a.m. and I wake up. Oh man, I slept horrible last night. Oh, it must be the alignment of the stars and the moon.
Right.
Like, no.
The bed's
was
not squishy in the right places.
Exactly. It was that Red Bull you decided to have at 7 or 8 at night.
Right.
So it's like, get really clear early on in recovery. Get really clear about your diet. Get really clear about creating that plan at nighttime. Stop looking at the the television screen or the phone by 8, 9 at night if you're trying to go to bed at 10.
Right.
And really, I cannot emphasize this enough. This is important for all recoveries. But if you have a job, this is that much more important for you. Getting enough sleep, getting enough rest is of the utmost importance for a structured life.
For sure, especially depending on what substances you use. At least for me, I use meth. That was my substance of choice. When I was using, that's all I ever used. That's all I used in my latter addiction. So when I'm tired, that is, especially in early recovery, not now. Now it doesn't bother me, but before in early recovery, tired was a huge trigger for me. Because like I used to use meth to not feel tired. Like when I was tired, I would get high. Now it's like I don't do that, but I would still be extremely tired. I need my 8 hours. Like maybe not 8, like 7. I don't care. As long as I get a decent amount of sleep, that's okay. But in early recovery, that was detrimental for my recovery. I would be in a terrible mood. I'd be wanting to get high all day. That's just me. But
yeah, and as far as a structured life goes, it's all encompassing. It's it's holistic. It's meant to say, let's look at the internal and the external. Let's look at our diet. Let's look at our sleep routines. Let's look at everything. And then slowly but surely change those things to make them what you want them to be.
Right. And there's the important thing you said too, slowly. It's a matter of, like you said, you always harp on that 1% change per day. That's 365% change by the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about slowly implementing change in your life. So like for some people that might be, okay, I'm eating really unhealthy. Like I'm eating cake out every single day for every meal. It's like, okay, so what I'm going to do is this week I'm going to make breakfast. And every day you make breakfast that week. And then the next week you're like, okay, I'm going to try lunch now. And it's like just slowly changing. Don't be like, I'm never going to eat out at all.
And maybe again. It's not every day. Maybe it's just like, I'm going to, I eat out all the time, but maybe I eat breakfast at home twice a week at first. Just get it to something that is achievable, that is good for you. And once you do it once, you're going to feel good. You're going to feel good. And here's the thing too, there is a secret, especially what we know about intelligence. And then as far as crystallized IQ and things like that, making a plan helps intelligence. This is scientifically proven. The only other thing that is scientifically proven to help improve your IQ or your brain or your mind, whatever you want to call it, is working out, is healthy living, healthy body, healthy mind. Go up, pump weights, go up, walk, do something,
Feeling attacked again, right?
Oh, well, yeah, but do something
Right.
that it's like, I'm going to wake up and I'm not just going to be bump on the log. I'm going to go, like you said, walk the dog. I'm going to go do something, get out there, get some fresh air in your lungs, do what you need to do. Right.
Just figure out what works for you. Yeah.
So with that being said, this actually ends. I mean, this went pretty quick this time, but it ends our Wednesday cast. Tune in this Friday. Once again, we're going to be interviewing, I believe it's going to be Reverend Dr. Deborah Smith, if she's going to grace us with her presence on that one. Or you can tune in next Monday where I believe we will be finishing up the stages of recovery. Thank you for tuning in.